Hey, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co, and today I'm reviewing Weirdwood Manor. Weirdwood Manor is a 1 to 5 player cooperative game which players are going to be playing as one of several characters facing off against one of several villains while being in this mansion with a random assortment of rooms and a slowly rotating board that makes it harder and harder to figure out where you need to go and how to get there. This game is a prototype, rules and components subject to change, and I'll have a link to the crowdfunding campaign down below. Now with that out of the way, let's talk about the game, how it plays, all of that, and the general idea is you are trying to win by taking down the villain, and you will lose in one of several ways depending on the villain you're facing off against. So for example, right now we have over here the Chaos Ogre, and the Chaos Ogre you'll lose if either time runs out, that's a universal win condition for all people. Basically, whenever this completely rotates to a new day, you're going to rotate this track, and once 12 days have gone completely, the time will run out and you'll lose the game. Additionally, in this case, we'll lose if Lady Weirdwood over here, if she dies, if she gets attacked enough times and dies, or if the Blight track hits the end, that's the other way we'll lose in this particular, against this particular villain. Meanwhile, we're trying to take him down, and to that end, we're going to go through a sequence of turns, ideally trying to effectively going through a general cooperative structure in which bad things are happening every single game, every single round, good things are happening through the actions we take, and our goal is to level up, to power up, to take down the various Scarabs who are going to be in the way, these little cute little bugs over here, and then to eventually take down the Blight Ogre himself before any of the lose conditions trigger. It's also worth noting, by the way, some of the components in front of you, the acrylic standees, for example, these Scarabs, I think some of these components are deluxe. I don't know exactly which ones are and aren't, but take that into account as you look through the page. There'll be, I believe, a retail version and a deluxe version of the game. On your turn, what a player is going to do is you're going to go ahead, and they have great little play areas over here, by the way, but on your turn, what you're going to do is you're going to go ahead and play a card to one of the areas on your board, to one of these time slots, and that will matter, because effectively, when you play a card, let's say we go ahead and play Shadow Steps. Yeah, let's play Shadow Steps over here, and based on where this time tracker is, we're going to look over here, we're going to play the time over here. We can play any Warden Tactics cards. These are basically voluntary optional cards that you can earn throughout the course of the game, and you can play them on top of your cards, which will give you various boons as you play through the game. But then from there, you're going to advance the time of day track based on where you played the slot to, so we're going to advance it counterclockwise. We're going to advance this until we hit over there. That's because that's the first spot that matches this time of day. You're going to be playing that little game of trying to make sure you play a card in a way based on three things, effectively. Based on the open slots you have. For example, right now, if it were my turn again, I wouldn't be able to play another card here, which means best case scenario, I'm going to play a card over here and then advance a 3. So time of day that you have access to is going to be the first factor. The second is where you actually want things to move in terms of sometimes you want rooms to open up, and depending on how you rotate the board, that will change what rooms do and don't open up. And then third is, of course, the fact that you're trying to be mindful of time running out, and so you want to go as early as possible while being mindful of those two other conditions. So you'll play a card down to one of your slots over here, you'll go ahead and activate that card, and it's also worth noting that throughout the course of the game you can acquire companions. Companions, when acquired, will go to the side of your board, effectively giving you a wild spot where you can play a card, and that can be very helpful, although companions will get more expensive to acquire as you go through the game, but they will give you abilities making them fun and also useful to get your hands on. With all that out of the way, when you play a card, you'll activate the symbols on the card. In this case, we have two movements, or we can jump to another room on our current ring. The game's going to have 3 rings. You're going to start in the entrance hall, and you'll slowly make your way into the inner rings where you get better and more powerful actions, but you have to deal with the various Scarabs in the way and actually end up getting there as you go through the game. When you take a movement, you'll effectively look at, let's move this back to the starting situation over there. When you play a movement, you'll be able to move through openings as far as you want to anywhere that you can have access to. So for example, let's have Celia over here go 1, move all the way down over here and into the lily pad parlor, where she can go ahead and jump to either room, which would potentially get her access to a room that's otherwise locked off, and be able to do the ability over there, and then also gain this resource. So effectively, that's a fun little room over there that gives you access to rooms you don't have access to. And remember, this is all randomly set up, although there are tiles that will let you swap positioning of things. There are tiles that will let you adjust and swap positioning of various tiles in different ways, but in general, the board setup is random, giving you a slightly different puzzle every single time. So you're going to go ahead and do that. Now that we're over here, we can go ahead and move even further in over here. Let's try to move along the ring and see we can get into the Fae Breach over here. There's no Scarabs in the way, and we can go ahead and activate that ability there, going down 1 health in order to get 1 of each resource, which will help us slowly power up. That's the core way this game plays. Most of the time, you're going to be running around from room to room, trying to activate the rooms, because as you can see here, there's an absolute smorgasbord of abilities going on as far as the various things you can do, the resources you can gather, the fact that you can go ahead in different spots over here, you can take down various Scarabs, if I can find various spots, There are attacking spots over here. Here we go. We have the Cleansing Sanctuary, where you can go ahead and gain a health and kill a Scarab over there. There's going to be different options as far as being manipulating the time track, gaining resources, getting various Warden Tactics cards, basically prepping so you can getting more companions. Basically prepping so you can get more and more things that will help you in your journey, because ultimately your goal is to level up, because the Chaos Ogre, or whichever boss you're fighting against, will be leveling up as you go through the game. To that end, the players have a few things you want to be mindful of on their tracks. We have the slots to play cards. We have the cards themselves, which are asymmetric decks, by the way, giving characters their own unique feel past their player boards themselves, which additionally have a degree of asymmetry over here. So for example, each character is going to have their own abilities, and as you level up over here, you'll be able to roll more dice in combat, as well as being mindful of your health, which is also going to be your hand size in the game. So you're trying to gather the various things for your abilities so you can use those. You're trying to move up these tracks over here. This is basically your experience track. Whenever you take down enemies, you're going to gain experience, as well as other things in the game will give you experience too. And as you move higher up, you're going to get various bonuses as you go through this, which the middle track over here is the battle track, which effectively gives you extra health, swords, and shields when you engage in combat. Speaking of which, when you engage in combat, you're basically going to face off against, whether it's a Scarab, whether it's the Chaos Ogre himself, you're basically going to be rolling a handful of dice depending on what your dice allocation is, and you're going to be trying to make sure you can match up swords against the enemy's shields, and trying to outpace them so you can go ahead and deal damage to the very Scarabs only require 1 health damage, versus the Chaos Ogre requires a bit more to actually take him out. So, and also, he'll be powering up as the day progresses. His Chaos Ogre strength over here is getting stronger and stronger as the time track slowly moves it around, meaning yes, you are powering up, but you need to be mindful that you need to power up faster than they are powering up, or he is powering up, as you go through the game. When you're done with your turn, because your turn consists of a card play, you move the track, you take the actions on the card. The cards have different symbols on them, so sometimes you saw over there, that was a movement. These ones over here we have an example over here of Scarabs don't stop movement, because in general, Scarabs will stop your movement as you go through the mansion. You have to be mindful of that. Scarabs will not only stop movement, they stop the activation of the room. In general, you get to activate a room either when you move to it through an unobstructed path, or alternatively, when you go ahead, let's find over here, alternatively, when you go ahead and attack someone, when you take an attack action against Scarab, you're also going to go ahead and be able to activate the room if you kill a Scarab in the room. So if you clear the room from Scarabs, you'll be able to activate the room as well as if you had moved there. So very often you have to give up an action just to move there, because you won't be able to activate the room, but then you can kill the Scarab, activate the room, and also start clearing threats in the game. When you're done with your actions, the enemy's going to take a turn through playing their card over here. And again, every enemy deck is a little different, but they follow some core principles. Over here, we're going to move the time track too. So in other words, the time track is moving whether or not you want it to. It's moving both when you play cards as well as when the enemy goes. And then the back over here, we have an idea of what the enemy's doing. In this case, we know the enemy's likely spawning Scarabs in some way. Although in this case, because it's currently on green, the enemy's calm, because we're on level 1 over here, nothing will spawn. But otherwise, we'd be rolling dice and spawning Scarabs in a variety of rooms over here, depending on the circle and column that it's in. From there, we're going to go ahead, let's say not from there, that would be it, that would be the enemy's turn. The next player goes, at the end of their turn, I just want to show you some more actions. This one, we're going to move the time track 3, so time slowly ticking along, whether or not you want it to, and the enemy's going to be moving this time round, and this time they have a sequence over here. This particular card is Hunting the Lady. If the enemy is currently in the lady's room, meaning if he's already with her, then we go ahead and spawn a Scarab on the boss. Alternatively, we move the Chaos Ogre to Lady Weirdwood's room, or as close as possible. So cards are going to often have text and either or situations depending on the current board state. And over here we have an attack card coming up as well, where the Chaos Ogre is going to try to attack either ourselves or the lady, depending on positioning. And in general, that's the core sequence of the game. The core sequence is you on your turn play a card. You're going to play a card down to your board where you have availability. You will rotate the time track over here, which both is a timer on the game, but also has access, unlocks or locks off access to a variety of rooms. When you're done with that, you're going to go ahead and take the enemy turn. That on your turn, you'll often be moving to rooms and or taking attack actions, and sometimes gaining resources depending on the cards you played. You'll also be boosting yourself through Warden Tactics stars, through various companions, and through gathering of resources that you'll be using when you ultimately have to take down the enemies. Past that, when you're done with that, the enemy is going to activate, playing a card on their turn, in which they'll be trying to take their bad actions, often involving spawning Scarabs, trying to attack you, and that is basically the core sequence. The last thing to really cover is the fact that there are refresh turns. When your entire row is full up, when you are full of cards over here, you take a refresh turn where you pull back cards, but unfortunately Scarabs are going to spawn, spawning from the center room and moving slowly outwards on the board. So the Scarabs that are on the board are going to try to move outwards, and the new ones will spawn into the throne room and into the variety of rooms over here. So you basically have to be mindful that every 4 turns, or 5 or 6 as you gather more companions, you're going to be taking refresh turns where more bad stuff spawns in the game, which is going to get in your way as you play through it. And that is basically Weirdwood Manor. A bunch of asymmetric characters, a bunch of asymmetric bosses, a puzzle of a board in a mansion with a variety of rooms in the way they're set up, and then trying to puzzle your way through that sequence to ultimately win against the bad guy before he wins against you, or time runs out. And with that, let's go ahead and dive into the review, starting off with ease of play. The rulebook is fairly easy to go through. It's a little on it's a medium-length size rulebook. There's a lot of stuff to actually get into, to learn, to understand, but I would say for the most part, it's fairly simple, just a lot of things to go through as you go through the game. So overall, ease of play, definitely not bad, and a very solid rulebook. Game time, around 90 minutes or so. I wonder what the box says, but around 90 minutes in my experience so far, and table space is not bad. It's basically what you see here, plus this space over here for each additional character. As far as what I like, don't like, and can see others not liking, in general, I like the board off the bat. Just this board starting off, both the rotating rooms, so that you have to be mindful of access, and just the smorgasbord of abilities. If you watch my content, if you watch my opinions in general, you know that I like powers and abilities, and this game gives it to you in a variety of ways. You have your starting asymmetric characters, each with their own slots of powers. You have the companions, which give you another way to power up. You have the ward and tactics cards, which will go on cards helping you even further, and then you just have tons of rooms, all that let you do something, and trying to find the puzzle of which rooms you can have access to, and which rooms you can actually activate is enjoyable, just from, again, that sheer smorgasbord of abilities and the rotating access aspect of the board. The asymmetric characters and bosses further add to that. The bosses themselves giving you different puzzles to fight against, following a core system that is fairly procedural, but then giving you different ways that each boss interacts with the game state, so that there's another puzzle every single time. Again, just adds additional variety to the experience, more ways to engage with this between the different ways you'll approach board setup, different character combinations, the companions. You won't have that many companions coming out game to game, which means you can play through several games before you come close to seeing all the companions. And there's other things we haven't heavily talked about. So for example, one thing we haven't talked about is the idea of bonuses, that as you have matching symbols over here as you play cards, you can potentially acquire bonuses. So for example, if we had played this over here and this over here, we can go ahead and get bonus symbols by matching cards. There's another thing to be mindful of. There's a bunch of small stuff like that we haven't really gotten to, but leveling up your various tracks over here to get more powerful, while earning the various goods to unlock to utilize your abilities, in general just gives you more stuff you can do in the game. The card play, your hand of cards that gets stronger as you level up your life over there, again giving you more opportunities, more actions on your turn. Some cards are less satisfying than others, but in general, moving around the mansion, activating rooms, killing scarabs, and just trying to be mindful of how you defeat the puzzle of the bad stuff approaching you as you try to level up faster and outpace it, overall is very satisfying. I also like the teamwork aspect in this game. This game is playable solo, but there's a strong teamwork aspect when you have characters who are playing off each other, depending on the rooms in the mansion, to be able to help each other in the game. Many of these options on the board will give you things to your teammates, or help you utilize or move around your teammates, or do different things that are not just about yourself. And while it is heavy on symbology, I will say I also like the fact that the player aids here are excellent. There's multiple player aids, each giving you a full listing of all the various symbols you'll see in the game, so that everything on this board, while possibly overwhelming at first, is just a card away. I think player aids are a huge part of game design, or should be a huge part of game design, and this is a game which could be a mess if they didn't have them, but because of the player aids, all the symbology over here works really well. As far as things I don't like in the game, first of all, I didn't like the day aspect over here. The little puzzle of how to play cards to move the time clock around the board. That felt like a timer on the game, but not a rewarding timer, or not one that really, it just felt annoying to deal with the moving of the day. Both on the enemy deck themselves, the way this paces out slowly moving around, but then the way you have to play cards to different sections over here, especially as you get locked off segments. It does mean that the companions have a huge strategic aspect, because having that flexibility as you play cards is huge. But I felt that the day system of time running out, I'd almost rather the game simply said, hey, here's 15 turns, call it a day, or call it whatever it is. But the way the game system is structured here, the way you have an inner track that then rotates an outer track, kind of just gave me a sense of pressure without a clear sense of when the game actually would or wouldn't end. So it wasn't like I had, 20 turns and I knew I had 20 turns. I had an arbitrary number of turns that would move at different consistencies, and I could see it being rewarding, especially as you have to be mindful of how to adjust the mana so you have access to rooms, and that part I do like, but the general timer on the game wasn't it felt more like something that was in the way, as opposed to something that gave me a challenging puzzle to overcome. I think having a timer is not a bad thing. The way this was implemented, I didn't find particularly rewarding. I'd also say that moving without activating a room is not a satisfying experience either. You have these symbols on your cards, you have to move around the board, and you have to go ahead, I'm going to move and activate this room, and then I'm going to move here, and there's a scarab here, and I'm not going to activate that room because there's a scarab there. And yes, when you kill the scarab, you get to activate the room, but it does mean that very often when you have a choice of symbols in front of you what to do, you have the fun things to do in the game, which the fun things will actually help you win as well, or you can stop doing the fun things to kill the scarabs, which are important to keeping control of things, but again, it kind of just felt like something that was in the way as opposed to a rewarding part of the puzzle. To me, I always want to do fun things in games, and when a game is giving me a choice between, hey, you can activate these 2 rooms and that's fun, or you also have to do things that will keep things in control, but then you have to give up one of the fun things to do in order to keep control, that part I didn't find quite as rewarding. The nice part is you do get experience, so there is a balancing factor there, because experience translates into moving up this track, and moving up the track means more fun things, which is fun. But I would say the scarabs kind of felt like something that was in the way, as opposed to a fun part of the puzzle to manage. As far as I can see others not liking in the game, first of all, lots of random dice rolling in combat. This is a game where you're going to be rolling dice, and that means a lot of dice mitigation and management as you face off against, whether it's a small scarab that you managed not to kill, or whether it's facing off against the big bad and rolling a whole handful of dice and having the system not work out for you. There is dice rolling in this game. Doesn't bother me, but understand that there's a lot of a tactical Euro puzzle going on here, followed by handfuls of dice being rolled. And then additionally, I would say in general, similar to what I said, restraining the scarabs, the beetles, in general felt more like legwork. It feels like something you have to get done in order to actually win at the game, as opposed to an overly satisfying experience. As far as final thoughts on Weirdwood Manor, I overall enjoyed this game. Ultimately, cooperative games rely on that system of you do something good and the enemies do something bad. That's how the game systems work in all cooperative games, and nearly all cooperative games, not all. But the general idea is something bad has to be coming your way in order for you to do the good thing and defeat it, and then it's all about the pacing. The bad things have to get stronger, but so do you, and the game does manage many of those aspects very well. The Chaos Ogre, or whichever bad guy you're facing off against, they get progressively stronger throughout the game. They level up, they roll more dice, they do progressively worse things, and you have to be mindful of that timer on the game, both the actual timer as well as the over here in the case of the Chaos Ogre, the Blight Threat and Lady Weirdwood, as she slowly gets more and more defeated and weakened and weakened. So the game does a good job of giving you those timers, of giving you a sense of escalation on the bad guy, but giving you, the players, a sense of escalation at the same time. You will level up, you will increase your health, you will roll more dice in combat, or alternatively you might die pretty early if you're not doing those things. And so it gives a good pacing of escalation throughout the course of the game, while having the standard good thing happen, bad thing happen pacing going on. For me, some small things got in the way that didn't fully enhance the experience. Things like the fact that, again, the time track I didn't overly love, and the scarabs I felt like very often is a choice of doing the fun thing versus doing the responsible thing to actually win, and those things definitely took away from my experience in a minor way, while still overall enjoying the asymmetry, the powers and abilities, the room puzzle, or the companions, the characters, the bosses, and the general variety of experience and powers and abilities that the game provides. Overall, for me, it's a 3.5 out of 5. I enjoyed the game, I could recommend the game, a few nitpicks as far as it got in the way, but overall an enjoyable experience. As far as other game recommendations, first of all, Labyrinth. It might be, or Labyrinth, I think. Labyrinth, the original game from, I want to say Ravensburger, that has you pushing tiles in and out of the board. Kind of gives you a similar feeling of the navigational aspects of this in a much lighter experience, but still a weirdly enjoyable game if you haven't played it. And then additionally, if you're looking for a puzzle cooperative experience that also has a circular board, but a very different puzzle, The Loop from Pandasaurus Games is a very satisfying experience of using your powers and abilities against asymmetric bosses and scenarios, all while trying to come together in something that will have you outpace the bad guys and ultimately win the game. In any case, then, until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. I hope you enjoyed this video, and as always, I hope you have a good one.